welcome to Is This the Norm? Please be sure to subscribe, like, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, Pandora, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in with us today. I'm Laura.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Rebecca. Today we will be discussing the history of, as well as some current events surrounding humans' attempts at detecting lies. So, although many stories, comic books, shows, and movies have told tales of telepathy, we can't read one another's minds. We don't know whether people around us are telling the truth or lying. So, long before the polygraph machine was invented, the so-called experts of the time have been attempting to find a way to figure out whether someone is telling the truth. So in ancient China, they used the rice chewing test. A person was made to chew a mouthful of dry rice or rice powder and then spit it out. They thought that fear and anxiety suppressed the nervous system, which reduced saliva production. So if the rice came out dry, it meant the person was lying. If it was wet, they were telling the truth. In ancient India, they used the stabled ass test. A sacred donkey was placed in a dark room, its tail coated in black soot. Suspects were sent in one by one with instructions to pull the donkey's tail, and they were told the donkey would bray if pulled by a liar. The logic was that innocent people would pull the tail, causing the donkey to make noise, and guilty individuals fearing divine retribution or the donkey's magical detection would avoid touching the tail, returning with clean hands. And then in medieval Europe, they used the trial by ordeal, which had a few different versions. There was the trial by fire, where the accused individuals held red-hot iron or walked across hot coals. Their hands were bandaged, and after a few days, uninfected healing indicated innocence. And if it was infected, then they were guilty. And then the trial by water, where suspects were bound and tossed into a body of water. The belief was that the pure water would reject the guilty, causing them to float, while the innocent would sink. And, the logic was that God would physically protect the innocent from harm. Obviously, none of those were, logic ways of detecting lies. But in ancient Greece, they actually used observational clues. So Greek physicians and orators, they were the scientists of the time. They observed nonverbal behavioral cues and monitored involuntary physiological responses. So they tracked breathing patterns, heart rate, sweating, and speech variations. These are actually what the modern polygraph machine attempts to detect. Well, they monitor those in order to try to detect deception. So there were a few earlier rudimentary versions of the modern lie detector test in the early 20th century, but the first portable polygraph machine that was developed and used extensively was invented in 1921 by John Augustus Larson. He was actually a police officer in Berkeley, California, and he had a PhD in physiology. So he was in a unique position to develop something like this. His motivation for developing the polygraph was actually really altruistic. He collaborated with his police chief in developing and implementing his invention because he was trying to reduce brutal interrogations that he saw happening all the time. So, they didn't have that many tools back then, so they would basically just try to beat the truth out of suspects. And so he didn't like that. He was like, there's got to be a better way. So he invented this device that tracked respiration, pulse, and blood pressure simultaneously on revolving drum paper. And then his protege, Leonard Keeler, further refined the device into what is known as the Keeler polygraph in the 1930s. And the new version added another measurement, which was galvanic skin response or sweat gland activity, still used today. So by the mid-20th century, police departments across the U.S. adopted the polygraph as a standard tool to eliminate suspects and secure confessions. However, even the creator, John Larson, saw how it was frequently being misused to coerce suspects, and that untrained personnel were using it like a definitive tool to pass judgment on people instead of just another tool in their, belt. He actually referred to his own invention as Frankenstein's monster because he saw where it was headed. The federal government actually used polygraphs on an industrial scale during the 1970s and 1980s, like 1 million tests annually. The CIA and FBI, they basically made polygraph clearance a staple of their counterintelligence and employment screening to prevent espionage. Despite its widespread use, the machine proved highly susceptible to countermeasures, failing to catch some of the most damaging spies in American history. Because of the widespread false positives and civil rights concerns, Congress passed the Employee Polygraph Protection Act of 1988, which I did not know about this. Heather might have, but this law actually bans most private employers from using lie detector tests for pre employment screening. So, we have people that have been in law enforcement in our family and they've had to take polygraphs to get the jobs. Not every employer can do that. It's restricted to government agencies, national security, and there's other ways that it can be used, but like theft, economic loss for specific investigations, but it just not anybody can just use it to screen for employment. The legal battle over the admissibility of polygraph tests in trials actually started really early. Like right away, people were like, we don't know if this should be part of the court system. Because in 1923, so this was invented and implemented in 1921. So only 2 years later, the landmark federal case Fry versus United States rejected one of the earlier inventions by William Marston based on systolic blood pressure test. The court ruled that the technology lacked general acceptance in the scientific community, establishing the influential Fry standard for admitting expert testimony. The Fry standard is basically a legal test that requires that the underlying methodology or technique is generally accepted in the relevant scientific community. Does that sound right, Heather? Did I explain that correctly?
Yes. Yeah. It's still used today, the Fry test,
Yeah.
at least for state court. I think that our standard is different in federal court, but neither here nor there.
Yeah, so the polygraph is what started that. The results of polygraphs, they remain broadly inadmissible in both state and federal courts due to the high error rates and fears that juries will give undue weight to what many experts call junk science.
I should have explained that. Like in federal court, the standard is even higher. I mean that polygraphs, yeah, across the board, or you can't bring those in anywhere. I just actually had a case. I shouldn't say just, but in October I went to trial, and part of one of the interviews of my client they brought in last minute. It was just a trial that, well, let's just say that the opposing counsel works for government. You know who you are. And they were trying to be snaky and bring in polygraph evidence. Like, once you've been an attorney for a while, you catch on to what people are trying to do when they're grasping at straws, when they're losing at trial. So they were trying to bring in this one interview of my client where she had a polygraph. It had nothing to do with her lying or anything. It was like early morning polygraph, and she was like half asleep still. And the person was like, "Hey, we can't continue this. You need to go walk around." And to continue it, and we'll have to reschedule it. And instead they were trying to bring it in as like my client refused to do the polygraph or was shown to lie. But, my judge was smart, thankfully, and was like, that ain't coming in. You can talk about her interview and that she didn't get the job, but you don't get to talk about the polygraph. So attorneys still try. It's still out there trying to be used even in the civil context, but definitely in the criminal. That's a no-go.
Well, yeah,
Anyways.
kind of sorta. So, like I
Yeah.
said, they're basically for the most part inadmissible for both state and federal courts because of, what we talked about. So, most jurisdictions actually explicitly bar polygraph results from trial proceedings. Military courts have
Oh,
upheld
yeah.
restrictions on them.
Different.
However, there are exceptions that can
Right.
allow polygraphs to be allowed as evidence. So 19 states permit polygraph evidence only if both the prosecution and defense sign a formal pretrial stipulation agreeing to its admission. So there's like really strict
Yeah.
admission.
How often is that gonna happen? Like, both
Right,
parties?
exactly. And even then, even if that happened, the judges retain gatekeeping discretion.
Oh, yeah.
So even if all that
Always.
happens, the judge could say no.
Right.
The unique exception is New Mexico.
Hmm.
You don't practice law in New Mexico, so
Uh,
why would you know this? But
no.
they do allow polygraph results into evidence without stipulation under strict rules of mutual disclosure. So that's it's basically not allowed. You know, just to be clear, the polygraph does not detect lies. It detects physiological responses like sweat, breath, and heart rate. The modern polygraph usually consists of pneumographic tubes, so two tubes placed around the chest and abdomen to measure respiration rate, and then a blood pressure cuff, standard, blood pressure cuff, like in the doctor's, wrapped around the arm to measure pulse and relative blood pressure. And then the galvanic skin resistant sensors. These are electrodes placed on fingers, palms to monitor sweat gland activity and electrical resistance. And then also motion sensors, pads or devices placed under the seat or feet to detect muscular movements and countermeasures, which we'll talk about later. And then there's the questioning techniques. The test relies on simple yes or no questions. The examiners use the, comparison question technique. It's basically they ask irrelevant questions to establish neutral baselines, like, is today Monday? And then they ask comparison control questions. They're broad questions about like your past behavior. They're designed to elicit anxiety. So, like, have you ever lied to get out of trouble? Something like that. And then they ask the relevant questions, which are the direct questions that they really want to know the answers to. So, did you commit the murder? Stuff
Well,
like that.
honestly, and maybe you're going to get to this, but just hearing that question, knowing how
Yeah,
much your life depends on answering that question
exactly.
correctly could
Exactly.
spike some stuff, right?
Exactly.
And you
Yeah.
know that because you're human
Right.
and you have cognitive thinking and you're like, I know
Yeah.
this is what they're getting at.
Like,
This makes
if
me
you're a
nervous,
suspect,
even if you're
whether you did it
innocent.
or not, you're going to be nervous as hell
Yeah,
because we
as
know
all get up.
people have been convicted of things they didn't do. Right.
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 Yeah.
So
Could you
go
imagine
honky.
us? I would probably they'd be like, "Is it Monday?" And I'd be like, "Is it?
Yeah,
I don't
I
know."
know. I'm so
Start sweating right
anxious.
away.
Right.
It could be Monday. It could be Friday. Can I
What
check my
time is it? I
watch?
don't know. Is it Monday?
Yeah, us on a polygraph, forget it.
Oh, Lord. I know.
Yeah. My
And
anxiety would be through the
yeah.
roof.
And on top of the data that they get from the polygraph, the actual results themselves are subject to interpretation. And this has literally happened. One examiner might say deception, another might say inconclusive, and then any other one will say truthful. That's literally happened where three different examiners have said three different things. So, what does this mean? I think it means that you can be lying and the test giver can determine that you're telling the truth or that you're lying, and you can be telling the truth and the test giver can determine that you were lying or telling the truth. For this reason, many refer to these tests as junk tests and refer the science behind them as junk science. Unfortunately, there is more evidence to support this than not. I mean, inaccurate results are just as likely as accurate results from what I can tell from research. I mean, it's pretty bad.
Well, even when you were talking about blood pressure, you described it as relative blood pressure.
Exactly.
So even the actual equipment itself is subjective. And then
Exactly.
you put two different humans
Or 3
trying
or
to,
4 or 5.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
just so many variables that are not
Exactly.
solid.
I know. I can't believe it's being used, but it is. So there's like 4 different things that can go wrong. There's a false positive because someone telling the truth is terrified, anxious, traumatized, fails the test. And there are many, many examples of this where they know the person was wrongfully convicted and that they were telling the truth because DNA later proved that they were telling the truth. And then there's the false positive when the person administering and interpreting the results interprets them as deceptive when someone else may have determined that the results are inconclusive or even truthful. And then there's a false negative, which is a guilty subject beats the exam and It looks like they're telling the truth when they were not, whether they were using countermeasures or not. The psychology and physiological responses of sociopaths or antisocial
Yeah.
Bingo. That's
That's
what
what
I
I was
was
thinking.
behavior are not
I
going to
was
be the
like,
same as everybody else. Yeah,
Sociopaths.
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
sociopath would ace it every time. They
Doesn't
don't
matter.
care.
Well, not necessarily. We'll talk
Okay,
about
I
that
not
later.
every time, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's the first thing that comes to everyone's mind. We're like, bingo, sociopath.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's a lot of false narrative out there about that, but I'll talk about that in a bit. So there's also a false negative is when the person administering and interpreting the results interprets them as truthful when someone else may have determined the results are inconclusive or even deceitful. So all those things that can go wrong. Now we'll talk about that. So specific examples when polygraphs go horribly wrong. One of the worst examples of polygraph failure was when a killer passed and an innocent man failed the polygraph during the murder investigation of a 74-year-old woman, Viola Manville. After failing the polygraph administered by the New York State Police, detectives were able to get the innocent man, Frank Sterling, to confess to murder. This has happened more time. I could give you hundreds of examples of this happening. This is just one. Sterling was then convicted of Manville's murder and sent to prison, while her actual killer, Mark Christie, passed the polygraph, also conducted by the New York State Police. He went on to abduct and murder 4-year-old Kaylee Ann Polton. Christie was convicted of her murder and then confessed to Manville's murder. Frank Sterling was released from prison after serving 22 years for a crime he did not commit. So that's a very egregious example. I can give you more, and I will. So there was also the wrongful conviction of Jeffrey Deskovic in New York after failing a marathon 6-hour polygraph and interrogation session in 1990. He falsely confessed and was convicted of murder. 16 years later, advanced DNA testing proved his innocence and identified the true serial killer, Stephen Cunningham. I could give you so many more examples, so many more.
I hope they sued the New York Police Department.
And they usually do. They usually get some, but it's not enough. There's never enough money to make up for 22 years.
And the
Lord.
personalities of cops,
Or
especially in the
death of that
70s.
4-year-old.
Yeah.
That's never gonna come back.
Exactly, Laura.
There's so many of these that I've heard of, like on other true crime where this happens.
Exactly. That's why
New York was bad in the 70s, like so bad. The cops, like they didn't. It was just about.
This was in the 90s.
Well, I mean, even 70s, 90s, but in the 70s it was
Yeah.
really bad because New York was just a hole of crime and issues and.
Oh yeah, I could give you hours and hours of examples of when a polygraph indicated deception, a test administrator interpreted the results as indicating deception, or even the police falsely claimed that the polygraph indicated deception, and this was used to streamline the investigation towards an innocent person. I can also provide hours and hours of examples of when a polygraph indicated truthfulness or a test administrator interpreted the results as indicating truthfulness, and the police to use the information to eliminate a guilty suspect. So I'm going to give you some examples of that right now. But if you go look, sometimes AI is so dumb sometimes. They will give you an example of Ted Bundy. However, there are a lot of false claims that he took and passed a polygraph. That is not accurate. He actually failed one that his legal team gave him, so they didn't make that public. And that's the only one that we know of. So we know he was, he had antisocial behavior, obviously. So it's not just because you're a sociopath doesn't mean that you're gonna pass it. However, one accurate account of a killer passing a polygraph is the Green River Killer, Gary Ridgway. Gary Ridgway passed a polygraph test administered by the Green River Task Force in May of 1984 while being investigated for the murder. So he was under investigation, but because he passed the polygraph, he was dropped as a prime suspect and then went on to continue killing for almost 20 years.
Hello, New Mexico. What you doing? What you doing?
Well, that was the Green River. That was
Well,
Washington.
I know, but everyone knows about that. New Mexico's still letting
Oh, yeah,
polygraphs be
yeah,
used?
exactly.
Like,
Right.
are you kidding me?
Even New Mexico, it's still,
Both
it's
parties
not
have to agree,
willy-nilly.
right?
I don't think so, but it's,
Oh,
I
okay.
don't
I
know.
thought that's what it
I
was.
mean, heaven's sakes, you're going to get an expert that says it's crap, and then you're going to get an expert that says it's good. That's just how it goes with this, is what I was finding. So another example, Aldrich Ames, CIA counterintelligence officer during the Cold War. He sold secrets to the KGB. He was polygraphed by the FBI in 1986 and the CIA in 1991 and passed both polygraph exams. He continued his espionage for years before finally being caught by a wiretap. So that just makes me feel like, in the 1920s, the police didn't have that many tools in their belts. Now they do. So I don't know why we're still using this. Another example, in 1993, after very suspicious deaths at the hospital where he worked, his coworkers, the other nurses, suspected Charles Cullen right away. And they told the cops, hey, we think this guy's super sus. So in 1993, he was given 2 separate polygraph exams 3 months apart and passed. And on the basis of how he did on those lie detector tests, meaning he passed, he was allowed to continue working as a nurse. By the time he was arrested 10 years later, Cullen had killed, by his own estimate, 30 to 40 people at medical facilities in the Lehigh Valley and New Jersey. So Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Police agencies continue to rely heavily on polygraphs. Everybody who listens to true crime, which is most of us out there at this point, it's something addictive about it. We hear so many times about the guilty passing polygraphs and the innocent failing polygraphs. We hear it so much. It's still, the police still use it. They still rely heavily on these polygraphs. They streamline investigations based on them. It's a tool
So-
that they continue to use so often that it's confusing to the rest of us who have delved into the science and history of polygraphs, which tells us that they really are only slightly better than flipping a coin.
So my question is why? Because like you said, we have so many tools in our pocket now that we can use that are legit and
Mhm.
solid. Like, why do they continue to lean on this polygraph?
I don't know. I think it's just, this is how we've always done things. I swear that's what it is. What else could it possibly be? We have
wild to
these
me.
tools, and Laura, the agencies, they're still spending money on the newest machines, and it's still happening. It's so confusing for anybody that has actually looked into this, and yeah, it's confusing. I don't know. I don't have an answer as to why they still use it. I don't know.
I think this is my 2 cents. It could be totally wrong. But I think that they don't use it really for the results, but they use it, which
Yeah.
it is also improper, to get the person that they are pretty sure is the one that did it to be
Right.
like, "You failed, dude."
Yeah, they
Like,
use it to streamline the investigation.
right? Like
That's
Watts, the guy that killed his, the family annihilator in, I think it was Colorado, where he killed his wife,
Oh, right.
pregnant wife, and 2 little girls.
Right.
That's what put him over the edge.
Yeah.
Was that polygraph where he finally then admitted. But then again, there's, like you said, it's the flip of the coin where somebody takes it who is innocent and then they interrogate them for hours upon hours after, like, you
Right.
failed, dude. And so, like, it has been proven time and this could be a whole nother podcast, is these interrogations, the way they ask the questions, they put words into the person's mouth.
Oh, yeah.
That then
We've all
comes
seen
out
The
as
Making of a Murder.
right, and, turns into a confession when really it's not a confession, or it's like a person that's,
Right.
has a low IQ, and
Yeah, it
they
kind of goes hand in hand because they've used polygraph results, or they've lied about polygraph results
Mhm.
in interrogations. Like, that actually happens more often than
Right.
anything else. They'll tell you that you didn't pass when you actually did. Happens so
Mhm.
much.
Yeah,
And
just don't agree to
um,
take one. That's my advice.
th-
Just don't
oh,
do it.
I
Yeah,
never
that
would,
was what I was thinking. Never agree to take a polygraph
no
because
matter
they
what.
can't use the fact that you didn't take it against you, right?
Exactly.
No.
Well, they will,
They
but
will.
I
Well, they
don't.
can try,
Irrelevant.
Right.
but
Irrelevant.
for all of you listening, don't buy that
Don't do it.
BS.
Yeah.
Don't let
Lawyer
them
up.
talk you into it. Yep.
Lawyer up. It
Yeah,
doesn't
honestly,
matter.
you shouldn't be going and talking to them, period. Like, if you're a
Right.
person of interest, get a lawyer.
Yeah. And of
I
course, the
wouldn't.
media will be like, look at them. They refused the polygraph. They lawyered up. Who cares?
Yeah,
Doesn't matter.
media's stupid.
Be safe.
Right. There are polygraph countermeasures that can be used by test takers to distort the test results. So there's different things like breath manipulation, muscle tensing, mental arithmetic. They're supposedly can be used during like the control part of the test to distort the baseline so that the relevant questions appear less deceptive. So, like biting your tongue, pressing your toes to the floor, clenching specific muscle groups, manipulating your breathing patterns or rhythm, visualizing stressful situations, and performing like mental calculations. But not all of those are going to work, obviously. And a lot of the modern polygraph instruments and the examiners, they're specifically trained to try and identify these techniques and take steps to detect the countermeasures, like um, the motion pads. So every time I hear about someone like beating a polygraph, I think of this episode from The Americans, which is this show is about like two Russian spies living in America, like posing as suburbanites, basically. It was a really good show, but they're it would flash back to like their training, in Russia with the KGB trainer, and he tells one of the spies to clench their anal sphincter during the control questions to artificially spike the physiological stress response. So, but now most polygraphs include sensor match, so they would know that you were doing that. They would know that you were clenching your butt muscles, basically.
That
So,
is
So
so
that
funny.
that makes me think of just a little side note, cute story. One of my friends, her her grandma taught her this, or her mom this, and her mom taught her this, and now she does it with her son. Is she tells him, if you're lying, your cheeks turn red. So when he's telling a lie, he puts his hands over his cheeks, and then she knows. Little, like two,
right,
3, 4 years old, but
right,
kind of funny.
yeah,
Makes me think of the donkey, and you know what was the other one?
right.
But
The
eventually
rice chewing.
yeah, the rice chewing, like,
I know.
eventually people start catching on, and so you can't use it anymore, but
Yeah, I mean, the point of me bringing those up in the beginning was, that was cutting edge science at the time.
oh,
And,
you gotta start somewhere.
and polygraphs were, the cutting edge science in the 1920s. That was over 100 years ago at this point.
I know,
Let's
and
move
then
on.
our generations ahead of us will be laughing about this polygraph test we
I
used to
think,
use.
I mean, honestly, like if you know the science, you laugh about it too.
Yeah, it kind of leads me back to my contraception episode of jumping over a recently buried individual to prevent pregnancy and using alligator dung.
Right. The that was the science of the time.
Right.
Made sense. So that is actually all I have. That's all I have on polygraphs and lie detection. What do you guys think?
Yeah, like you said, a lot of this I pretty much kind of knew because, yeah, a lot of people watch and listen to, you know, forensics and whatnot. Um, but it really I can't get over the New Mexico thing. Like, now I wanna go into a rabbit hole and figure out, like, is it that they just never, like, took that off from their laws, or if they still support it, or if it's used? Like, why like, get it together, you guys are the only state that is doing this? That really bothers me.
Yeah, something wrong there, right?
I would say, like, just from legal mind, and, this is with zero research, but I'm assuming it's going to be only used and admissible for, like, very limited purposes. What that is, I'm not sure
Yeah, and maybe
exactly.
it's like civil stuff. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Uh-huh. But, I
But
mean,
still,
yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I had a civil trial, and if that would have been admitted, I mean, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure I told the judge, if this comes in, this is reversible error 100%. Like, if we
appeal.
lose trial, we're going to
Yeah.
the appellate courts, and there's no way
Right.
they're gonna. I mean, she was smart enough to know better, um,
Right.
for all kinds of reasons. But I would assume, like, without doing, it's going to be for limited purposes. But I still feel like limited purposes, what we call, that's more prejudicial than it is probative. Like the prejudicial effect of admitting anything from a lie detector test outweighs the probative value of it, is like the terminology we use pretty frequently across the board with any type of evidence we don't want in, because, like, yeah, it's relevant. It's always relevant. However, it's more prejudicial than it is probative. Therefore, it's inadmissible, is kind of, that is our algorithm of determining certain admissible items at trial, which I know that's probably speaking another language, but that's as simple as I can put it. Like, I just cannot see any probative value that outweighs how prejudicial that is, because
So, in layman's terms, what she means is she can't formulate a scenario in her mind where a polygraph would have enough value to be used in court, correct?
right.
Seriously, because
There we go.
you could have someone else come along and interpret the results a different way. So
Mhm.
I 100% agree.
Because then you get a mini trial, what we call a mini trial within a trial, because then you're going to have to bring in
Yeah.
an expert that says, well, I interpret it this way, and another expert that says, I interpret it
Right.
this way. And then
It's
it's
just a
like
big waste of time.
waste
It's
of
just a
time
big
and money.
circle
Like,
jerk.
It's far too subjective. We need
Yeah.
more objective evidence to hold up in court,
right.
right?
And
like, these are people's lives you're talking about.
mhm.
A 4-year-old died because of this. Someone lost 26 years of their lives because of this. And this is just one story.
And somebody continued to murder for 20 more years.
Yeah,
Ridgway.
multiple times.
Right.
Multiple times. Yeah,
I mean,
the nurse too.
I mean, I remember, if you've watched any of the true crime episodes or listened to, like, they'd go and look for somebody that was missing that he had killed, and they would find, like, some other random body that he's just dumping them like crazy.
Yeah, he was very he was.
Are you talking about the Green River Killer?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. Insane.
Like, they'd be like, oh, we didn't find this one, but we found this other body, and then
Right.
we find another body, and it was crazy. I mean, I don't know, I'm probably exaggerating, but from what I remember, I'm like, what? We found what? Huh?
Oh, I remember when we were a kid.
Yeah.
I remember
do
the
too.
Green River Killer. Like, that's the one that stuck out because
Mhm.
he was operating where you guys lived.
Yeah.
In that
right.
area.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And my mom is, Nervous Nelly, and always made us afraid of everything. I mean, he was targeting prostitutes,
Right.
but still, you don't know. Like, they're opportunists. It's,
Still scary.
Well, you know what? Maybe
Exactly.
that's my problem. Maybe I don't tell my daughter that she needs to stick with me because someone's going to kidnap her and murder her or make her a slave. My little one runs off all the time. Maybe I need a little more of mom's nervousness with her.
Right.
probably.
She
Mom
probably
used
needs
to
a little bit of a little horror story. Just a little one.
Yeah,
Mhm.
just a little
Right.
baby one. I remember mom dressing us in neon colors too if we went to like places like fairs and whatnot so that she could find us.
That's a good idea, actually.
I know. It's her nervous nilliness hasn't always been so bad. It's probably what saved Heather, at least. She's the wild one.
Probably.
You
yeah.
probably wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for her nervous nilly.
Right. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm totally circling back. Now, I want to talk about this sphincter thing. I need more information.
Of course you do. Of course you do.
Well, it's not going to help you. Well, number one, we're not going to ever take polygraph tests, but even if you did, it wouldn't help you because
Well, what were they determining? Like, they could determine that you were sphincter. You were
and
clenching
before
it?
sensor mats, that
So,
was
like,
one
do
of
they
the
have a
ways.
butt sensor? I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're sitting on a sensor. Like,
They're
they'll
like,
know if you're
Hey,
doing
you're
it
clenching
now.
you're clenching your butthole. We know
Yeah,
it.
stop doing that. We know what you're doing.
I think I probably would naturally do it. Like,
I'm
I'd be
glad
like, "Why can't-"
I'm glad that I know this because I probably would have tried it. Like, even if I was innocent, I'm like, you know what? I remember that show. I'm gonna do it.
I'm gonna clench my butthole.
I think, isn't that kind of like a natural response too? Like
I'm
No,
trying to do it
Laura.
right now.
No,
I had a
it's not.
friend one time. We were driving his car. He had a really nice car, and he like hit a bump, and he was like, "Ooh, it's like poking your butthole, like tense your butt cheeks." Like, it's kind of a natural reaction. That's not really fair to
think
use.
so. I don't think
No?
so.
No,
You
'cause I'm
clench your
trying to
butt
do
when you're
it.
nervous or like tense?
No, it's not
No.
natural. Because
Oh,
I'm trying to
maybe
right
it's just
now, and
me.
it doesn't feel natural. I feel like I don't
You
have a
know
lot of
everybody's
control.
doing
Well,
it right now.
I guess I
Everybody's
mean
doing it that's
I
listening
know.
to this, right?
I mean, I guess not my butthole, but like my butt cheeks. That's what I'm
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
Is that maybe that's different?
Maybe that is different. Like, I can clench my butt cheeks, but my
Okay, that's what
butthole,
I'm
it's like,
thinking.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really
But that's
gotta
to protect
concentrate.
your butthole, right? Like
Maybe.
so if you clench your cheeks, doesn't your I don't know. Back
Well,
to
try it.
anatomy.
I'm trying right now. It's not
I'm doing
working
it, but
very
I
well.
can't tell because I feel like your butthole is smooth
I can
muscle.
only do one at a time.
Yeah, I can't do both. Yeah, you
Rebecca,
can't do them both at the same
what's
time.
going on over there?
That's interesting.
I feel like that's a talent, one at a time.
I can't do both. It has to be either the sphincter or the butt cheeks. I
That's what I'm
just did it.
saying.
Oh, I thought you meant one butt cheek at a time.
Well, I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I can. If I do both of them, I've got to do the sphincter at the same time. It's the only way I can do it.
This
I
is
don't
getting
know.
out of hand.
Well, I've
Okay.
had too many babies, so my sphincter is not trusted at all.
You've had two. You've had two
It doesn't
babies.
matter. I had traumatic birth with Aliena. I told you
Yeah,
about that.
she-
Where
Yeah,
I told
no, she was a giant.
I
You're
told
too
Jed, I
small
was
to have
like,
our babies.
I think my butthole is not in my body anymore.
I think it was funny because Aliena had to go to NICU because of the traumatic birth. You said that you went down to NICU and she was just like this ginormous baby and all these little tiny babies next to her.
Yeah, she was. She was
She
huge.
did not belong there.
Mm-mm. Yeah, but yeah. Anyways, I
Yeah,
guess
we
you
got a
can't.
little off track there. Sorry.
Wait a minute. I'm still got a question. So, what does before they had the butt sensors? What did clenching your sphincter help with again?
I mean, okay, do it, Heather, and
I did it.
you'll understand. It's physiological, like throughout your body. Like it affects everything for some
Oh, yeah,
reason.
my core.
So,
My core gets a
yeah,
little
it-
bit.
Yeah, I
it-
feel
it
like my
affects-
posture straightens out.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, it does a lot of things. That's why.
It's hard because I can't like do it for very long, like 2 seconds. And it's like,
You could if your life depended on it, I
Well, I
bet.
think it's just a quick do it, and like as you're answering or before you answer,
Oh.
even like to mess with your physiological response is different. Like
it's not like a
and
constant
then
thing.
and it's during the control. So then, because that's the baseline that they need to establish.
okay,
so-
got it.
The countermeasures are usually done during the basic, like, what's today? Is today Monday? I mean, or whatever.
you-
So
It's Monday and you do your sphincter.
yep,
Okay.
exactly,
Now I get
exactly.
it.
It doesn't work though, so it doesn't matter anyway. But
Well, no, now that we have butt sensors. Okay, well, that answers my question. Sorry that had to circle back. That
that was a good question.
now
Actually,
everybody's going to be listening, doing what we're doing, or they'll be
Right.
like, what is wrong with these girls? Well, that's a whole nother podcast.
right. So that is all that I have. I hope you all enjoyed it. Join us next time for Is This the Norm? Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks, everybody.